One of the reasons, among many, I suppose, that we come to church is to be reminded of what we believe. Worshiping together is a regular refresher course on what we hold true about God and this mixed up world, and even what we believe about ourselves. And when I'm done up here, the very next thing that will happen is that all of us will stand up and say, "We believe in God." The practice of naming what we believe is meant, of course, not simply to be a memorization drill we go through once a week, but a regrounding as preparation for living like believers all week long. And when we say what we believe, we are also by default often saying what we do not believe. Maybe not out loud. The creed is not full of corollary unbelief statements, but implicitly, when we invite everyone to come to the table, we disavow exclusion. When we receive the message of forgiveness, we reject the barrage of messages that would have us believe that it's too late or that we're broken beyond repair. When we read this old book full of wisdom and strangeness, we abandon the idea that truth can only be found in neat, pat, tidy stories. And in this old book today, we hear the story of a woman who is quite possibly having the worst day and the best day of her life simultaneously. Years ago, Dr. Mitzi Miner was talking about this story of the determined mother, an outsider bent on saving her daughter. And Mitzi said something like this: "She was a woman who did not believe what they told her about a woman's place, a woman's voice, or the worth of her daughter. She was a woman who did not believe that God's love had ethnic boundaries. She did not believe that there was a finite amount of grace to go around." Now, she didn't approach Jesus and announce these unbeliefs, but her every word and every action demonstrated what she did not believe and what she did believe. She believed that Jesus could rescue her daughter and that she and her daughter were worth rescuing. She believes this even when, in a shocking response, Jesus calls her a dog and challenges her value and seems to reject the idea that there is, in fact, enough mercy to go around. So we need to stop here for a minute and consider what we believe about Jesus and what we do not believe about Jesus. And maybe with a little humility, we need to try to figure out what Jesus believes about himself and his own mission in the world. There are some reflexive explanations for this ugly scene. Maybe he was testing her. Maybe he was using commonly held bigoted language to call out the prejudice. Maybe he was tired. Maybe, in his limited humanity, he lost sight of the expansive reach of his divinity. Maybe the teacher had to be taught, or at least reminded of the larger vision of God's grace and love. He does prove a quick study. Jesus immediately recognizes the wisdom and the courageous hope of this defiant woman standing in front of him, and he changes his mind and commends her outspokenness and heals her daughter. None of these turns has to mean that we believe in a diminished Jesus, but rather that we can believe in the possibility that God is not unchanging nor unresponsive, but ultimately is compassionate and merciful in abundance. It is a tricky thing we Christians profess to believe in Jesus' full humanity and his simultaneous full divinity. But we'll say this out loud too in a few minutes. First, that Jesus is God from God, light from light. And then that he became incarnate, that he was a little baby born to a woman who grew up and was killed. We believe that Jesus is God, all-knowing, all-powerful, and a human, limited by what the human mind can understand and susceptible in some moments to the constraints of humanity's stingier compassion. Jesus seems to believe at first that the food, the gift that he was offering to the world, was really only for certain people at certain tables. But in the face of her desperate hope and self-immolating love, he shakes that belief off. He unbelieves in the limits and restrictions. And he believes, for the first time or all over again, in the wideness, the increase, the expansion of God's indiscriminate love. There's a lot to sit with and wonder about this exchange. There's a lot to believe and not to believe. And you certainly don't have to believe all my wayward thoughts. But it's good practice, and maybe another good reason to come to church, to pay attention to what we say we believe. And from time to time to think about what we do not believe, or what we used to believe but not anymore, or what we need to start the process of unbelieving in. Like the messages we hear about our precarious standing in the world, like the belief that we must constantly prove our worth, that faithful people are always quieter types, that women don't belong in certain rooms, that God doesn't care about certain individuals or whole groups of people, that God never changes. Scott reminded us a few weeks ago, is a pretty limited take on the nature of the divine. And then there's that troublesome belief that we can't change, that it's too late, or that we're broken beyond repair. Turns out there's a pretty long list of things we could all bear to stop believing. Thank goodness, then, for this unnamed patron saint of unbelief, a woman who believed so wholeheartedly in the wide and merciful embrace of God that she shed countless other beliefs. She left behind ideas about whose voices get to be heard and who gets to talk back. She did not believe in the boundaries of ethnicity nor even of propriety. She did not accept that there was only so much grace to go around. She did believe in Jesus. Maybe she believed more in Jesus than Jesus believed in this moment. She believed healing was possible and that she and her daughter were worth fighting for. She believed that change was possible for someone like herself and for this mixed up world and for God. What about us? What do we believe in these days? And what do you and I not believe? This is not just a philosophical exercise, and it's not just for mindless recitation. What we believe and don't believe will ground us and reshape our lives. What we believe and do not believe will color our choices, our hopes, our loves, our unbeliefs, and our beliefs will send us into new places to find God. Give us the courage to insist upon our own belonging. Grant us the capacity to believe in healing, healing for ourselves and for others in our wake, and maybe for this whole mixed up world.